Hi, I'm Mary Spender, and welcome to Tuesday Talks. You are about to see a snippet of my interview with American singer-songwriter Josh Turner. You might be aware of his YouTube channel, and I've been a fan for a good long while, so wanted to learn more about his influences and songwriting process for The Other Favourites, amongst other things. If you are wanting to watch the whole extended conversation, you can watch it over on Nebula. The best way to access Nebula is by signing up to a subscription for CuriosityStream, who are very kindly sponsoring this video. More on that later. So, let's get into the show. Tuesday Talks. When I was first introduced to your stuff, and I guess it was Sultans of Swing that I probably first saw, and then classic. What made you actually upload to YouTube and take this route? When were you pursuing original music and were you doing gigs and then you were just like, oh, this seems like a way to get people to my gigs? Or what was the thought process around it? Because YouTube was a very different place back then.
No, that was not at all what led me to it. So I joined in July of 2007 and I was 15, so I wasn't really playing hardly any gigs at that point. I'd only been playing guitar for about 2 years, and my very first video. So I have an older sister who was in college, and she was in college at that time, and was like, "Oh man, like my boyfriend's friend did this like crazy thing, and like in the dorm room, and like posted it on this this new upstart video sharing service called YouTube." And I remember just being like sort of incredulous at the idea that there was a website where people could just upload videos of anything. And then like, there were comments that were like, "Oh man, like this is so crazy," or whatever, it's like, him like wrestling with his friend or something. It was something, something stupid, something very, very early YouTube in its purity. And so I was like, oh, well, like I'm a teenager who is in deep need of gratification from people I don't know. Like, let me try, like putting up one of these videos of my favorite guitarist at the time, Leo Kottke, a cover of one of his songs. And so I put that up, and, there was a small but engaged community of people who like that guitar player that I was covering. And so I got some nice comments on it, and I was like, oh, well, like, this is great. Like, look at this little community that I can like sort of virtually be a part of here. And I mean, and again, like, it's hard to overemphasize, especially for like younger people who are listening, just how small and how scrappy YouTube was at that time, since like there was no money to be made off of it, either for creators or for advertisers. But so, yeah, I mean, me and like, there was me and like maybe three other guys, like three like middle-aged men that were covering this guitarist. Like, that was it. There was like four of us. And so, yeah. And then subsequently I posted a couple of videos where like I wanted to share a video with somebody that I had filmed, but the file size was too large to share by any means that was available in 2007. And so I just put it on YouTube and sent them the link. Yeah, I mean, and then shooting YouTube videos after that sort of became a reason for me to get together with people. I had just moved to a new city right around the time that I started my channel. And so finding other musicians at my school and saying, hey, do you want to get together and play music? And like, maybe we can shoot a video and put it on YouTube, became like a means of socialization for me. At a time where like, cause like I didn't play sports really, or like I didn't have a lot of, the more commonly appealing interests that a high schooler would have necessarily, especially as like a folk musician, like I couldn't even get together with like people who wanted to play rock, cause like I only had an acoustic guitar for, the first 2 years. Yeah. So, I mean, it became a way to make friends and to socialize, and that continued on into college. But then my sophomore year, everything changed because my Sultans of Swing video went viral, because of Reddit, and I changed my major to music, and that was sort of the moment where things started to get more of a whiff of seriousness, if not, like, I certainly still wasn't thinking of it as a career, because again, like, that would have been 2012, and there's still, I mean, the idea of making money on YouTube was still very nascent at that time. So, I mean, it was just a long, slow build. And by college, I had started gigging a lot more regularly, but my gigging life and my YouTube life were totally separate things. And the band that I gigged with, I didn't really put on YouTube. And it wasn't until I graduated college that I was like, okay, well, I have a music degree and I have this YouTube channel, and what are my options here? Basically, it was just kind of the logical path to take from that point, to start making to start getting really more serious about, like, okay, it's time to be good at this. It's time to make these videos really as good as I can, and not just, like, obviously I still make videos for fun and I still take a lot of pleasure in it, but that was the moment that I was like, okay, I need to approach this like a job more so than just a pastime.
Were your parents into music?
Yes.
Did they educate you? Did they, like, sit you down?
Not as such, no. But my parents had somewhat unusual taste in music. So my mom's parents were they were professional musicians. Her mom, they're both still alive, actually. They're 90 and 91. They're retired, but her mom was a piano teacher and accompanist, and organist for her whole career. And then my mom's dad was a choir director and singer. And so her musical tastes tended towards, like, classical and just, like, jazz music. And my dad, who, he would often have on just, like, classic rock, like standard, 60s, 70s, Beatles, Crosby, Stills, Nash type stuff, as well as Anglican choral music. He was a really big fan of, for some reason. He was in an Anglican choir in Cincinnati, where we were living in. Like, whenever we were driving somewhere in his car, it was either Abbey Road or like the King's College Choir, like doing, like, matins or something like that. Those like the two types of music that he had on all the time. So that was my musical diet for a while. But then, it was a huge gift also to have two older sisters who had good taste in music. One of whom was into, like, indie music of, like, the early aughts, like old 97s-y, like, type stuff, and, like, the Unicorns, like old punk rock. And then the other sister was into, like 90s pop and hip hop. So she had me listening to, like, Sublime and, like, A Tribe Called Quest and stuff like that. And, like, that's what was on in her car. So, when I assembled my first iTunes library, which I'm sure you remember, like, included a lot of, like, manually pulling in CDs and, like, finding the album art online. Like, it was this strange blend of like jazz from my mom, and, like, other just sort of, like, instrumental music, choral music and classic rock from my dad, and then, like, a smattering of this, like, other, like, cooler stuff that my sisters were listening to. So yeah.
That is an eclectic mix, but that makes sense. I will obviously take credit for all the British music you grew up listening to, because I was listening to the same thing. So my mum, very avid classical music listener, and I think that's why I started in classical music. Like, that's the music she enjoyed. Grew up near, basically in Salisbury Cathedral, where, the quality of the choir there, although I wasn't a chorister, I was a music scholar at that school. And then, when I got to university, just having friends who went off to Cambridge, Oxford, I went to Bristol, just the caliber of those musicians, it was just amazing to be around. But then the coolest thing about that whole scene, and a lot of musicians my age were also listening to other things, but I also had an older brother who was far cooler, is still far cooler than I am, and he just had a much cooler taste in music than I did. And it's I think that importance of parents and siblings on music taste is so fascinating. How do you, so with your music choices now, or discovery of music, is there still an era that you're particularly interested in and continuously researching?
The 60s. Definitely the 60s. Yeah. There was so much, man, it just like, it's hard to point at a decade where the change in style was so radical from the beginning to the end. I can't really think in the 20th or even now 21st century, I don't think there was a decade where people were trying so many new things in such a condensed period of time. I mean, if you think about, so 1960, you have early rock and roll, right? You've got maybe Chuck Berry's got a hit out there, but really pop music was still like Ella Fitzgerald and like Frank Sinatra singing like American Songbook stuff. Like that's what pop music was still largely. Like rock and roll and like stuff on like the race charts, was like still very much outside of the mainstream. And to think that like the particularly 60s pop is my area of interest, because like to think that that's where you come from, and then by the time you get off at the end of the 60s, you have man, I mean, it's like, well, Abbey Road is like the first thing that comes to mind in terms of just like one of the all-time high watermarks in pop and rock music. You've got like the birth of like electronic experimental music that's like going on, and like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, just the hard rock was starting to happen. Some of the early roots of like punk and disco and funk music were happening, and there was this energy that just pervades 60s music that I think pervaded the decade too, for a variety of reasons, but that you could just try anything, and it was this fascinating moment also where big labels were funding people who were just trying crazy shit and like throwing things at the wall.
You're writing at the moment. How's that going?
It's going well. So Carson and I have been stockpiling tunes for a while. Many have been published in sort of demo rough form on his channel, but we've got a handful of new ones that have never been shared before. And I mean, to have the time and the freedom to be able to do that at our own pace is, I can't imagine doing it any other way now that this is our situation. I try and like, I've tried to time this sort of like album cycle in such a way that like it gives us enough time to let ideas fully form, but also not so much time that we can, sit on our hands. There's enough of a deadline to where you really think you wake up and think, okay, I better put in some time on this today. And it is a weird thing because, there's really no incentive to be doing anything as a musician right now other than making money, other than needing a livelihood, because it's like, oh, well, I put out a new record, but I can't tour for it, but it's still very satisfying to be able to do that. And it's very nice to have a larger project to be working towards. And I am optimistic that hopefully by the end of the year, we will be able to, perform some of these songs for people, but it's going well. We've also just decided on a studio and an engineer that we're going to be working with, which is super exciting because we've never recorded in a pro studio before. Actually, we've either done everything here or I have one of my friends that taught me about engineering in college now has a semi-pro studio set up in his basement in Milwaukee. So we recorded our last full-length original music, Naysayer, at his place. But this one will be, we're actually like paying for studio time and are hopefully going to get to do it onto a big Studer tape machine through a Neve console and the whole 9 yards. So we're very excited about that.
Wow. That's very exciting. And, that is what this downtime has allowed for. Just the world is on pause. The music industry is on pause. I think people are just going to be hungrier than ever for live music again. So
I will be.
So yeah, I definitely will be. But awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
I'm still so proud to have collaborated with Josh on 2 songs. I'll link the videos below. And it was so great to chat in length about his career and influences and finally get him on Tuesday Talks. We go into more depth in the full interview up on Nebula, which is over an hour long. As mentioned, the best way to access Nebula is by signing up to a subscription for CuriosityStream. If you aren't already aware, CuriosityStream is the best place on the internet to see thousands of the world's finest documentaries and non-fiction titles. For a limited time, CuriosityStream is offering 41% off their annual plans. That's less than $12 a year for CuriosityStream and Nebula, which is a pretty amazing bundle. But anyway, now it's time for Patreon of the day. Now for generating a random number. 565. Alec Gaynor, you are my patron of the day. Thank you so much for your support. To everyone else, please subscribe, give this video a thumbs up, check out Josh's channel too. But otherwise, I'll be seeing you very soon.